Right now with us is the director, one of the directors and producers of the musical happening at the Museum of Worcester. It's starting up this weekend, The Rocket Man, the Robert Goddard musical. Robbin Joyce, thank you for coming in. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
So this is, for the past couple weeks, excuse me, the area has been celebrating the centennial of the launch of that famous rocket that pretty much started the space program.
Right. It was March 16th.
Yeah, that's right.
In Auburn. Yep. And we talk about that in the musical. We sing about it in the musical.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Robert Goddard from Worcester went to Clark and WPI.
Yes. He
launched his rocket in Auburn. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a great story and really important history about this area.
Yes.
But whose idea was it to say, we could make this a musical? It seems challenging. And I was thinking about that earlier, but then I was like, well, they made a musical about Alexander Hamilton.
Right.
So whose idea was it to say, we can put music to this, we can do this?
Right. Well, our Fourth Wall managing director, Barbara Gerton, really is the driving force behind this. She used to work at the museum. She's been on the board and knew the 100th anniversary was coming up. So we started talking with a composer who lives here in Worcester about creating a musical for it. It took maybe 2 years from the idea to our opening night on Friday.
Nice. And it runs through this weekend.
Yes, weekend and next weekend.
And next weekend over at the Museum of Worcester. That's over on Elm Street. If you haven't been yet, please go. It's a great spot here in the city.
It is.
Even not just for the Rocket Man musical, but just in general, a lot of great history in this area.
Yeah, they've got a fantastic Goddard exhibit going on right now in conjunction with our musical.
So who's playing Robert Goddard?
We have a science teacher from Millbury.
How appropriate.
Yes, playing Robert Goddard. His name is Ryan Sullivan.
Okay.
And we've got Janine Belcastro-Went playing his wife Esther, who she's really why we're doing this musical for Women's History Month.
Right.
It just so happens his anniversary is in March during Women's History Month. But Esther, his wife, was his laboratory assistant and responsible for filing most of the patents that were used in the NASA program for their Apollo 11 mission to the moon.
Yeah, so he was the genius.
Yes.
And she was too, but he was the scientist, but he was probably terrible at keeping records and stuff. So thankfully, she was there to make sense of it all.
Yep, exactly.
And kept everything going on and kept business going on.
Yes, he met her while he was at Clark University. She was the assistant to the president and then eventually became Robert's lab assistant.
Now, I was talking last month with Charles Slatkin, who's I believe he's a teacher at Clark.
Yes, and he owns the Goddard House on Talawanda Drive here in Worcester.
Yeah, he was telling me the story about that. Yeah. Like he's a big fan of Robert Goddard. Found out they were just going to sell the house.
Yep.
Without any consideration that this is a historic property. The guy who lived here came up with all the plans that pretty much got us to the moon. And he bought that house. I mean, that's a kind of a cool story too. Saving a little history there. And he was telling me a little bit about Robert Goddard. He may be the foremost expert on the man.
I think so, at least in this area anyway.
Yeah.
He did a tremendous amount of research leading up to this purchase. He's done a documentary. You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah.
He is just a font of information.
And from all accounts, Robert Goddard himself took a lot of grief just for coming up with the idea of a liquid-fueled rocket.
He sure did.
They call him everything from a madman. He was out of his mind. He should be institutionalized. He was a fool. He's wasting his money. All this stuff. I mean, everything was against him.
Yes, we've got a song about that.
Oh, good.
Yes, yeah. Even the New York Times printed an article about how he didn't understand even high school physics because they thought that rocket couldn't operate in the vacuum of space, and they were wrong.
Very wrong, apparently, yeah. So it's interesting that, when I was talking to Charles Slatkin, his main focus was he wanted to get Robert Goddard's story out there, mostly to kids, not only to get them involved in science, but to prove that, if you believe in something, stick with it.
Yes.
And take it all the way.
Yeah, so important.
And you may fail, but you fail forward.
Yes, you learn the most from your failures.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he took a lot of grief, but then in the end, his rocket that went 42 feet in the air.
42 feet.
Yeah. I mean, that took us to the moon. The Voyager spacecraft just set a record for the farthest man-made object of traveling the farthest from the planet. I mean, think about it. And not just the NASA, not just the U.S. space program. I mean, pretty much any country that has a space program took it from his work.
During World War II, the Germans actually stole his blueprints and used them in some of their artillery.
Wow. Is that mentioned in the musical?
Yes.
Yeah, see, that's fascinating. That's like Indiana Jones
It
stuff.
is.
Right there.
The Germans.
Yeah,
yes.
right. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's opening this weekend, 27th, 28th. 2 shows on the 28th, 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And then again next weekend, April 3rd and 4th at the Museum of Worcester. Robbin Joyce is the director and producer. Thank you so much for coming in. Is there anything else you want to mention about it?
I do. I want to say thank you to the Worcester Arts Council and the Mass Cultural Council for their grant. They were very generous with a grant that allowed us to reach out to Stephen Murray to write this for us. And I also want to thank iAudio for providing captioning on April 4th, both of our performances on April 4th for people who are hard of hearing or have visual issues.
Nice. My last question is, are you actually going to launch a rocket during the musical?
Well, you'll just have to come and find out.
Okay, all right. Robbin Joyce, she's the producer, director, The Rocket Man, the Robert Goddard musical, Museum of Worcester. I'll post all that information on our social media, and then I'll post this interview up on our website. We'll spread that around. We'll get the word out. This is very important stuff, very important history for the city. And tickets are available at our website, fourthwallstagecompany.org, and that's the number 4. Nice. Robbin, thank you very much for full disclosure. Robbin also works with us here at Cumulus. Yes. But still, this is something you're very passionate about. It's what I do in my spare time. Right. Absolutely. So thank you for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.